good morning and welcome to this lovely Monday. This is Morning Cafe. My name is Fred Indemuli, and because the hashtag International Men's Day is still top trend, Happy International Men's Day. Belated.
Happy International Men's Day. You know, Flora was reminding us...
International Men's Day to you before you start castigating me.
You know, Flora was just reminding us before we went to Nia that yesterday was also World Toilet Day. And her focus yesterday was World Toilet Day and not Men's Day. But anyway...
Very unfortunate. But look on the bright side, 35 days to Christmas. How about that?
And my proverb this particular morning is still on the same. You must judge a man by the works of his hands. It's the African proverb this particular morning. I'm used to Stanley Nyeringita.
And I'm Flora Limukin. Of course, we do have a great show lined up for you this Monday, the 20th of November, 2023. It is also the International Children's Day, a day that is set aside to champion for the rights of children in every sector. And that is part of what will be forming our county diary discussions, among other things, including the National Dialogue Committee report that is now entering the final stretch, as well as that President William Ruto's trip to Germany, among other things, at around 9 a.m. Welcome, and of course you can be part of this conversation by interacting with us at TV47 News on X, TV47 Kenya on Facebook. The hashtag is Morning Cafe.
But I'm curious though, if, as a baby boy, does it count on International Children's Day as well?
Wow. Let's discuss that after the break.
If you did not get anything yesterday, please don't get it.
Let's force issues, Leo.
Let's take a look at the highlights.
Well, and our top highlight this morning is concerning matters floods, and yes, thousands of residents in Tana River County on the move, seeking higher, safer ground following heavy flooding that has swept away their homes and property, with authorities saying the El Nino rains are now affecting 33 counties, up from initial 19.
William Ruto off to Germany for his 42nd trip abroad as president, as he promises to secure 250,000 jobs for professional, skilled and semi-skilled Kenyans to meet Germany's huge labor requirements.
And in matters politics, former President Uhuru Kenyatta has returned to the public limelight and exerts the political field as he maintains he is still behind the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya bandwagon ahead of the deadline for bipartisan talks this week.
Well, those are the highlights. Let's now take a look at the top story this morning. The death toll as a result of heavy flooding and torrential rains now stands at 61, with more than 250 others left injured. This is according to the Kenya Red Cross. Meanwhile, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua says at least 80,000 households across Kenya have been affected by heavy rainfall, flooding and landslides over the last week. The DP says emergency services are using helicopters to deliver aid and rescue marooned families in different areas. Now on Saturday, Kenya Railways said flooding and landslides along the train track between Nairobi and Mombasa had forced the operator to close its cargo services. Kenya continues to experience intense rains linked to the El Nino weather phenomenon, which now affects 33 counties. Elsewhere, residents of Tana River County have been forced to move to higher, safer ground after floods swept away their homes and property.
Well, and let's have a look at the diary this morning. And to start us off, the National Assembly Committee on Agriculture and Livestock shall have a meeting with the CS, Agriculture and Livestock Development, to discuss tax waivers on sugar, rice and maize imports, and that will take place at the Parliament buildings. Away from that, President William Ruto's trip to Germany kicks off as he seeks to foster bilateral agreements between the two countries. And at the top of his agenda is matters climate change, as well as seeking the 200,000 opportunities German Chancellor Olaf Scholz promised Kenyans during his trip to Kenya in May. And the president will also be in France between today and tomorrow before jetting back to the country. It is also the International Children's Day. This is the annual day of action for children by children, from climate change, education, and mental health to ending racism and discrimination amongst children. And young people are raising their voices on the issues that matter to their generation and calling for adults to create a better future. And still on that Children's Day, the Children's Day celebration to take place at Kusitawi Villages, a children's home in the East Sub-County in Kiambu County, as from 8 a.m. And the chief guest will be the Cabinet Secretary for Ministry of Labour and Social Protection, Honorable Florence Bore. The East African Tourism / Magical Kenya Expo 2023 kicks off today, and the Kenya is set to host the third edition of the East Africa Regional Tourism Expo this week as the country roots for regional tourism, and that will be taking place at the KICC throughout this week. And away from that, the Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu will today inaugurate KCATC's ad hoc committee and launch the review process at Lake Naivasha Resort in Naivasha, Nakuru County at 9 a.m. Today in history, and after some 37 years as leader of Zimbabwe, first as Prime Minister and later as President, Robert Mugabe resigned from office as the parliament began impeachment proceedings against him in 2017 on this day. And yes, that is what we have on our diary this morning. Of course, we keep on updating you as we move on with the show. Time now to look at what we have on the dailies.
Yes, let's go straight to the dailies. We kick off with the Standard. On the Standard this morning, the front page, Ruto scores on terror but fails in graft war. Matters national security from success in keeping terrorists out of the cities to zero reference to mass demonstration deaths. President William Ruto's first State of the National Security Report was a mixed bag of fortunes. The story has been extensively covered on pages 2 and 3. Some figures there and data. Close to 2 billion shillings was lost to cyber fraudsters. Only 322 million recovered. 855 million cyber threats to Kenya's critical information infrastructure. Corruption cases increased by 64% from 17 in 2021 to 28 in 2022. Poachers, meanwhile, killed 36 elephants and 4 rhinos. A total of 1,764 aliens and undocumented immigrants were arrested, and 85 incidents of political violence were reported during the campaign period last year. That's the main headline on the Standard this morning. The other story given prominence on the front page, 12 dead in floods as relief efforts begin. It is our top story. Matters floods, people living especially in northeastern Kenya and parts of the coast region experiencing this, and a picture there of flooded houses at Kisauni in Mombasa. You saw that video of someone swimming inside his own house.
Yes.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate. And according to the weatherman, things are just going to get worse in the next 1 or 2 weeks. Still on the front page of the Standard, you'll form next government, Uhuru tells Azimio leaders. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta is back in the limelight, and he spoke. A picture of him there with the Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka when they appeared together in Ukambani. The former president telling Azimio leaders to remain united because they have a big chance to form government in 2027. Other quick highlights on the top strip of the Standard this morning. I'd rather talks fail than shelve housing project. That's the president, and that story is on page 5. Remember, this week is the deadline for the talks by the National Dialogue Committee, and the president says, I'd rather talks fail than shelve housing project. On the international scene, Zelensky's request to Africa, story on the international pages 10 and 11. In business, cheaper calls as Communications Authority cuts charges, and why stars cannot afford to drop ball. That's on the sports pages, page 31. A quick look at the back page of the Standard. Odongo's exploits give Shujaa fans reason to smile. This was from the Sevens yesterday. Kenya Shujaa were crowned 2023 Safari Sevens champions yesterday. Very interesting photos there of reveler Sarakasi dancers couldn't hide their pride in support of Shujaa. And that's the Standard this Monday.
Let's have a look at the Daily Nation. Quite a busy front page there in the top headline, after record taxes, state eyes fees and fines and Kenyans to feel pinch of higher levies, even as they struggle under current hard times. And President William Ruto's administration has now turned its focus on fees and fines paid to state agencies for various services as the government targets an additional 112 billion shillings in untaxed revenue to supplement tax revenues in the current financial year. And the government expects the various state departments to collect a record 431.2 billion shillings in appropriation in aid of fees, fines and levies this year, explaining the disparate adjustments on charges for various services offered by the state. And on page 4 is where you'll find the breakdown of the additional charges, including matters passport fees, registration of persons, land fees, birth and death certificates. And yes, that is covered on page 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. On the right side of the Daily Nation, ban of teenage pregnancies weighs down on Kandui, and Kandui sub-county in Bungoma County bears the ignominy of having the highest rate of teenage pregnancies in Western region. That is a story on page 2 to 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. And Kenya face home team Seychelles in Cote d'Ivoire. Kenya's Harambee Stars will be keen to get their 2026 World Cup Group F campaign right back on track with a win against Minnows Seychelles today at the Stade Felix Houphouët-Boigny in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. That is the story on the back page of the Daily Nation. Away from that, the very lower strip of the Daily Nation this morning, El Nino bodies of KRA staffers recovered amid flooding havoc. And the bodies of 2 Kenya Revenue Authority employees whose vehicle was swept away by raging waters on Friday have been recovered alongside that of border rider, as coast leaders yesterday declared the flooding in the region a humanitarian crisis. And heavy rains have been pounding the region for the past week, causing massive destruction of property and loss of lives. Yes, some matters politics there. Uhuru to Ruto, leave me out of your mess. And former President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday lashed out at his successor William Ruto for failing to deliver on his campaign pledges and blaming the Jubilee administration for the failures of Kenya Kwanza government. Mr. Kenyatta, who handed over the reins of power to his former deputy turned bitter political rival last year, said Dr. Ruto's government has performed below the expectations of Kenyans, and that is the story on page 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. On the back page of the Daily Nation, head breaks India hurts as Australia win 6th title. Matters cricket there. And Kenya to face home team Seychelles in Cote d'Ivoire. Yes, and that is what some other sports there still on rugby. PLS home side Kenya Shujaa retained Safari Sevens title in style at the RFUEA ground. That is the story on page 41 of the Daily Nation this morning. That is what we have on the Daily Nation.
Tunatakia kila laheri vijana hawa Harambee Stars kule walipocheza na Seychelles. Lakini nikome, hayo si maneno yangu, ni taarifa kuu katika gazeti la Taifa leo. Uhuru afokea Ruto na serikali yake kwa kuendelea kumlaumu, na kulingana na Uhuru, haya ni maneno yake sasa, hata mke wa mtu anaposhindwa kupata mimba wanamlaumu Uhuru, lakini nitaendelea kusema mawazo yangu, alisema Uhuru. Ana kwa ana, viongozi wa Kenya Kwanza wamekuwa kimlaumu rais wa 4 wakidai ndiye aliyeharibu uchumi wa nchi. Kitaka mengi katika taarifa hiyo ni katika ukurasa wa 2. Katika upande wa kulia, uchumi uko sawa, Ruto ajibu Raila. Ataka Wakenya wapuuze mtazamo wa Raila kuwa Kenya iko hali mbaya. Pia na vile vile katika ukurasa wa 2, katika ukurasa huo, pingeni ndoa za mashoga. Mke naibu wa rais Dorcas ahimiza viongozi wa dini wazuie ndoa za jinsia moja. Pale chini, bila bima mpya hutatibiwa. Mgonjwa atahitajika kuwa na bima ya kijamii ya SHIF ndipo atibiwe hospitali za umma. katika ukurasa wa 3 hapo, masuala ya afya. Pale juu, majonzi, vilio na hasara, mvua ikitesa raia, watu 80,000 katika kaunti 33 waathiriwa na mvua ambayo tayari imeua watu kadhaa. Mengine katika ukurasa wa 4 unaweza tazama picha za kutatanisha pale, watu wakijaribu kuvuka barabara au kuogelea. Masuala ya kitaifa kule Gaza, hospitali ya geuka jahanamu, WHO yakashifu mashambulizi ya Israeli yasiyokoma. Hapo ni katika ukurasa wa 8. Na pale chini masuala ya michezo ni piga ua garagaza, Ufaransa ulivyo ikinyanyasa Gibraltar kwa viboko 14 kufuzu Euro. Swala ya kutatanisha hayo. Hata sisi wana Man United hatujafika pale kucharazwa viboko kama hivyo.
Hamko mbali.
Lakini mnikome.
Let's take a look at the Star. The Star, make or break as Ruto-Raila talks enter final stretch. Azimio coalition demands VAT and other taxes on fuel cut to at least 8%. Deadlock, Odinga team wants housing levy scrapped or made voluntary. Yes, the deadline is this week. The other big story on the front page of the Star, don't blame me for economic failures, Uhuru tells Ruto, and a picture of the former president and the Wiper Party leader, Kalonzo Musyoka there. Other highlights on the front page of the Star today, why Calro scientist wants you to eat neglected weed. Interesting. And elsewhere, hyenas maul boy aged 10, very sad at village in Juja, friends escape. And it's strange that you can find such wildlife so close to residential areas. On the top strip of the Star this morning, Ruto to Raila, stop telling lies on the G2G oil deal with Saudi Arabia. And that story is on page 7, a very big talking point, that government-to-government deal and the alleged scam linked to importation of fuel. And that's the front page of the Star today.
Let's have a look at the People Daily and the headline there, stop blame game, Uhuru now demands. And retired president hits out at government officials who blame his Jubilee administration every time they run into problems. And yes, Kalonzo warms on bipartisan party risks if terms are not met. And yes, there's a picture there is a former president there and the Machakos governor, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka yesterday at a church service in Mwingi. On the top strip of the People Daily this morning, EACC freezes Oparanya assets in graft probe. The anti-corruption team gets court orders directing former governor's assets be preserved for 6 months as 1.3 billion case is heard. And that is a story on page 6 of the People Daily this morning. On the left strip of the People Daily, the news bit there on page 31, a brave Kenya Sevens team wins Shujaa Rugby crown. And congratulations to those boys there. Matters floods, over 8,000 families left homeless as floods rage. And that is what we have in the People Daily this morning.
And that is a cue to get into the whole East African kind of vibe. And this East African basically sets the pace for this entire week, getting into different areas. And the whole big story is on Matters new oil deal will ruin me. And as Kenya loses $100 million in Kisumu port business, Ugandan investor Mike Mukula's $270 million fuel facility is going into disuse on pages 4 and 5. As pictured there, there is Mike Mukula, who's an investor in the fuel sector. Other matters at the top strip, Tanzania shuns the ESC single tourist visa. And Dodoma says until its concerns over security, immigration and revenue sharing are addressed, it will continue to hold out on page 5. And on the left strip, pictured there, one of my favorite musicians, Shoma Jose. They talk about fun and games at the Nyege Nyege extravaganza. And just below it, a quick review of other headlines that make it to East Africa. Will polling take place in East DRC? Officials admit to challenges in troubled region. More on that is on page 9. An opinion, pitch for accelerated intelligence. Buwembo reckons AI shall be a human right in Africa. And it matters money. No longer a storm in a teacup. Dar starts a tea action eating into Mombasa's market. And an outlook. This matters health, and it matters good news actually. Breakthrough in treating diabetes. So a short voice recording is all it takes to diagnose type 2 diabetes. Page 22 on that. And finally, matters markets. Bamburi exits shaky Ugandan market. Cement makers selling off its stake in Hima on page 34. That in a nutshell is the East African.
Okay, let's take a look at the Business Daily. Front page of the Business Daily today, Airtel, Telkom and Jamii gang up to force 29%. Call tariff cut. MTRs drop to 41 cents per minute from March 2024. Safaricom and KRA had opposed the cuts. Interesting. Another headline on the front page of the Business Daily, Supreme Court hands Coca-Cola final blow in 8 billion shilling bottles row. Some more highlights of the ticker on the front page of the Business Daily. Ruto cuts subsidies to zero on IMF conditions. Elsewhere, Kengen taps 12 billion ABSA loan, repays NCBA. Finally, climate in action to cost Kenya 3.7 trillion shillings by 2050. Those are the stories given prominence on the front page of the Business Daily today.
Well, let's have a look at the Daily Monitor in Uganda. And the top headline there, APRA's court makes it easier to fire workers. And the Court of Appeal sets a precedent in a judgment saying the employer in a case before it did not have to give reasons for termination of an employee's contract. Interesting story there on page 4 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda this morning. And other stories in Uganda, government to give kingdoms 60 million shillings per month. And I guess that is the story of the beautiful lady on Friday was pictured in the Daily Monitor. Yes. That wedding.
We still remember it.
Oh, yes.
That wedding happened over the weekend. And now the government is said to give them 60 million shillings per month. Interesting. Yes, and on the right strip of the Daily Monitor.
Okay, 60 million Ugandan money.
Ugandan, yes.
It could be.
It could be about less than a million shillings. Yeah.
Still makes sense in Uganda. Experts call for overhaul of education exam system. Other stories there, Subi takes over as first bishop of Busoga East. Yes, those are some of the stories on the Daily Monitor in Uganda this morning.
All right. And even as you cross over to
the
Citizen into Tanzania this particular morning, the big story on the Citizen, why T-bills are in demand despite modest returns. Experts say investors' appetite for treasury bills remains high as local business people avoid foreign exchange risk exposure in outside markets. Was on page 2. So they give a whole interest rates for 364-day treasury bills in some countries in East Africa. And well, it seems Kenya is doing, has a higher number there, 9.2 in Tanzania, Rwanda 9.7, Kenya 15.6, while Uganda has 12.8. And the right strip, Romanian leader concludes visit. President Samia Suluhu Hassan, the Romanian counterpart, Mr. Klaus Lohanis in State House. He was in Kenya before he went to Tanzania, if I'm not wrong. The Romanian president.
Sometime last week.
Yes. And, well, in a nutshell, the story is there. Bayer Cement upbeat as Swiss firm sells 65% stake. And that is at the bottom strip. As we take a look at that with you, TPC to invest 112 billion in molasses factory. And, well, finally, what Tanzanian youth activists want from COP28. And this even reminds me, COP28 is just around the corner.
It starts towards the next week.
Next week?
Yeah.
Oh.
All the way to 7th of December.
Okay. Tuangazie gazeti au jarida la Mwananchi kule Tanzania as we wrap up this look at the dailies. Wakodi wenza wa kwenda nao kliniki ni kutokana na utaratibu na wataka wajawazito kuambatana na waume zao. Sasa mashemeji bodaboda waziba pengo, hofu kupoteza muda kupima ukimwi vyatajwa kwa sababu. Habari yenyewe ni nasema hivi, wapo wanaume wanaokataa kwenda kliniki kwa sababu aliyepachikwa mimba ni nyumba ndogo au ana uhusiano na mwanaume zaidi ya mmoja. Habari kuu kule Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Mwananchi. Habari zingine, baba wa aliyefia Israel aeleza machungu yake. Vidokezo vingine, safari za hija ziwe na jicho la biashara. Kwingineko, Askofu Ruzoka aaga akiahidi kubakia jimbo kuu Tabora. Habari zaidi, sababu za watoto kukataa ziwa la mama zatajwa. Na pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi, RPC achambua uhusika wa askari kesi ya mauaji. Hizi ndizo habari zilizopewa kipaumbele kule Tanzania kwenye gazeti la Mwananchi. Wakodi wenza wa kwenda nao kliniki ndio habari kuu pale.
Real quick, probably take a look at the cartoons this morning. Page 15 on the Daily Nation, page 12 the Standard, and as always page 10 of People Daily. Page 15 has to do with matters party politics.
That's the Daily Nation?
That is the Daily Nation on page 15. Matters changing, rather shifting goalposts. So there's a gentleman there wearing a jacket, and behind it, it has that logo of United Democratic Alliance Party, and he's shifting that particular goalpost, and that goalpost has been written party polls. This is in relation to the party polls for that particular party that were to be held, was it
December
9th, but have been April. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, so
This speaks largely on how disorganized or on fire that house is.
It is one of the issues I'll be looking at with my panelists later. It'll be interesting to see what they have to say about that. The cartoon on page 12 of the Standard today still matters to do with the ongoing fighting between Israel and Hamas, and seeing just a barrage of missiles with the Israeli flag on them, just flying with the heads of some of the Israeli heads of government. And that's a cartoon on the Standard today. Do we have Stano's cartoon, page 10?
Yeah, on page 10 of the People Daily this Monday, the focus is on Anne Njoroge. That is the lady, the woman at the center of that 17 billion oil scandal. And it's it's a caricature that depicts how just the situation that Anne Njoroge is in. She's in hot mess there, and just thrown somewhere in a jerrycan and it's on fire. It's a very interesting story that will be developing throughout this week, even as considering what you saw the Busia senators say there over the weekend. So it's going to be a hot topic this week. We're definitely looking forward to see how it pans out.
Speaking about hot topics, we'll be looking at the state of the nation with my panelists this morning. After the break, John Kibaya Ngugi, MCA Gatanga, will be on set, alongside Mesha Kodede, political commentator, Robert Alai, MCA Kileleshwa, and Maliba Arnold, public policy analyst. Do stand by for that conversation. Meanwhile, you can keep interacting with us on social media at TV47 News on X and TV47 Kenya on Facebook. You're watching Morning Cafe. Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. A very interesting morning coming from a very busy political weekend. And we'll be looking at some of the big headlines and some of the most interesting headlines in as far as politics is concerned. Uhuru to Ruto, leave me out of your mess. That's on the front page of the Daily Nation. On the Standard, you'll form next government. Uhuru tells Azimio leaders. Uhuru is also on the front page of Taifa Leo. Mnikome, Uhuru afokea Ruto na serikali yake kwa kuendelea kumlaumu. Uhuru is also on the front page of the Star. Don't blame me for economic failures, Uhuru tells Ruto. And on the People Daily as well, stop blame game, Uhuru demands. So definitely we'll have to talk about Uhuru Kenyatta and his return to active or to the public limelight. This morning we're privileged to have in studio Maliba Arnold, public policy analyst. Always a pleasure to have you in studio. Karibu sana and good morning.
Thank you, Fred.
Next to Maliba we have John Kibaya Ngugi, MCA Gatanga. It's good to have you at TV47. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Yes, Robert Alai makes a comeback to the panel. MCA Kileleshwa, karibu sana.
Thank you.
And Mesha Kodede, a familiar face of this panel, political commentator. Karibu sana. Gentlemen, a lot to talk about. But before we go to Uhuru's return and what it means in connection to the national dialogue, whose deadline is this week, I want us to take a look at something that has only been referenced through the cartoon on the Daily Nation today, and that is party polls, because at the weekend, on Saturday actually, is when the president met senior party officials, and immediately after that they sent out a statement that the UDA grassroots elections that had earlier been scheduled for the 9th of December, that's in about 3 weeks from today, will not happen, and new dates were set for April next year, I think 21st, 22nd and 23rd of April. Now, let's start with you, Maliba. It was never going to be an easy undertaking, running grassroots elections, but there was a lot of hope and a lot of expectation that at least one, the ruling party, will be doing this, grabbing the bull by the horns and ensuring that there are elections. Now it appears it will not happen. This leaves a funny feeling on people who have been expecting that there will be some political sanity in our political parties. What do you have to say about this?
Well, first of all, moving the dates is not refusing to deal with matters sanity. But again, political parties' elections are quite difficult. Matters elections anywhere, not just for IBC. If you want to realize how difficult it is to manage an election, just see how we deal with IBC and then escalate that at the level, any other level. The Waishimi was here will tell you that even in the House, even the election just for a committee to agree on who is this chair, the secretary, it's quite a difficult process. But be that as it may, I think for the ruling party, it was a little bit not well organized at that particular point, because I know a number of things who are standing in its way. First of all, currently we do not have a standing National Elections Board. So whatever way, even if they would have forced through, a court order was always going to come up. It was always in the wings, because you need a functional elections board to take care of that. Because largely the elections as were organized were being run by the Secretariat. Of course, there's the political goodwill to ensure that they rejuvenate the party and everything else, but that wasn't always aligned. Plus, 1 year into office, with the difficulties they had, I think situating elections in December, barely a year after the elections, for me, didn't feel as much as what I would call wise or safe at that particular point. Moving it to April, of course, gives them time to fix issues of the legal and statutory needs. Secondly, of course, there are political issues that needs to be spoken to. There are a number of people, for example, who worked in the trenches as the Kenya Kwanza team fought through to power. There are people they worked with in the wings. Those people need to be taken care of way before we deal with this. Then, of course, as you try to rejuvenate the party, there is then this culture in this country where people are looking at 2027, barely a year into elections. People have not delivered on their mandate, and they are very loud on 2027 and even 2032. So that in itself is not so good. So I think holding an elections now would really derail the agenda and the attempt at stabilizing this particular process.
Meshach, do you think that that's the reason why UDA is hesitant to go for these elections this soon? Because April is only 4 months away. How much change or how much adjustment can happen in those 4 months?
Thank you, Fred. I want to think a little different. You know, up to now as we speak, perhaps it is only one party that has gone down to the grassroots and held those elections. And I want to remind Kenyans that a party like Jubilee came to power and left without any grassroots elections, because it is difficult, and sometimes that is where the rubber meets the road with regards to whether a party is stable or not. So right now, there will be a lot of semantics out there saying how UDA is stable, we are building a big party, it is going to be even international until they go for grassroots elections. Then you realize how shambles they are. So many people in the leadership of the party fear that, because that is where the decisions are now made collectively. So it is easy to run a political party when everything is on your desk. You make such decisions very quickly and you move them according to your wish, unless you go to the grassroots elections and then you realize now everybody's opinion needs to count because they are now elected by members of the party. And so that is where you begin to take care of everyone's opinion, and it is difficult, and then it exposes you and the weaknesses that are in this party. So it is something that gives the party leadership a lot of fear. So whenever they are close by, they begin to see reality coming closer to them, and then they begin to push the date a little bit ahead to see if they can deal with a few things they fear about before they get to that election.
But Wanangoge, the president was intent on this, but a few things have come up, and some of them have been mentioned by the two gentlemen. Issues around politics, the fact that it is still very delicate, the relations between the regional balance, relations between within the party itself. Yet the president was keen on having this election earlier than later, sooner rather than later, so that he can have enough time to handle the fallout as it may. 4 months will not make such a big difference for the president, will it?
Allow me, Ndimuri, before I answer your question, to say hi to the great people of Gatanga. But coming to your question, my take is that it's a logistical issue and a timing issue, rather than we are chickening out as UDA from holding elections. The president properly pronounced himself when we held our national delegate conference in the month of October. And he was ready for that fallout if it were to come, so that we can start building our party. And I can tell you for free that, as this gentleman has alluded, party elections are not easy, because you are disturbing a lot of things. But the UDA party is determined to change the dynamics of party politics. Indeed, I would say it's very brave for the president to announce elections just 1 year after we've gotten power. We got to power, because that has not been the norm in this country. So I believe that there are a few in-house things that needs to be sorted out first. And I also know that there were some logistical issues. And I know also the timing was not right, because holding a party election in December when it's a holiday moment. The kids are home, the parents are busy, probably the kids, the rains are here, and you can see how they are pounding us. I didn't think the timing was right, but the idea of holding the election, I think it's the right one, and we shall hold our elections. The UDA party will hold its elections, and we will have time to build the party after we have done the elections.
Wanalai, as I was introducing this discussion, I could see that cheeky smile on your face. and looking at your Twitter account, I can see you have a flyer there saying the party that truly is that's truly democratic and listening. About it's a recruitment drive. Even ODM was looking to have something similar next year, but now it was to be early next year. The fact that UDA has postponed its own election, does that affect ODM's plans for its own polls?
No, I don't think that it affects our plans, because we believe that ODM, among all the political parties in this country, I think that ODM is the most grounded ideologically. I don't think that all these other political parties have any ideological, grounding to depend on, and so it is very weak. They're just vehicles for elections, and I was very surprised to see that UDA was calling for elections, party elections, more than 4 years to the next general election, because I believe that it was not going to happen. I believe that, when you're doing the party primary or the party elections, the internal party elections, a lot of things happen. And one of the things which happen is that you plant key men to decide on the next, party primaries and then the general elections on how the troops will form. And it was very hard. I don't see UDA doing elections for the next 2 years. And if they do that, then I would consider President Ruto very brave. You saw what President Uhuru did with Jubilee, and what even William Ruto, when he was the deputy president, tried to do with the ODM, and forced us to cancel the elections at Kasarani at one time. I think it's a lot of infiltration. They tried to so what UDA was trying to do was trying to encourage all other political parties to get into the alignment of registering members and then doing elections. Then they would withdraw. So when they withdraw, all these other political parties would, get into the momentum of doing their own elections, feeling like the time was on their side and things like that. And the moment the only political party they think they can compete with, which is ODM, is going to do its election, they're trying to plant all manner of spies and personnel inside there to ensure that they weaken the systems. You see? So this is the game which I think which I think UDA was playing. And they are not brave enough to hold the bulls by their horns, and now they have chickened out. I believe that for the next 2 years, you're not going to see, if things stand as they are, the same country, the same politicians, the same reasons why we have political parties in this country.
Nothing will change. So even for ODM, nothing is expected to change.
ODM it's the only political party. It is the only, by the way, it's the only audited party.
Are you hoping to have grassroots elections?
Yes. We in fact, on Friday we are launching the registration for members for Nairobi County, and we are going to do it for the whole weekend, and then we move to the other counties. We're going to go to Mombasa next. We have a whole plan, and by Easter next year we'll be having our party elections.
That will be around the same time that
I just needed to say this, that from my experience around political parties, I do not think it's even proper at the moment for any political party to conduct elections before we've got IBC in place. Remember that the voter register is actually freezed. You can have members, of course, who are not registered voters. That's given. But then for what the ORPP considers as full members, they must be registered members of, or rather, they must be registered voters. So as such, today you can't even register you can't even move your vote, for example, if you wanted to move. The register was closed. Most likely we will have a new register. So it's only fair that probably we put IEBC in place, before, and then reopen the process before we even do any other thing around political parties. Because as I speak, we've got about 1 million people now who are due now. First-time people who can actually become, who've actually gotten IDs. So last year it wasn't working so well. So those particular people, plus of course the others generally who are out there, you realize that if you look at the ORPP records, most members are actually in UDA and ODM. Mm-hmm. So even if you were to try to register a party today, you realize that when you run within the IBC system, the ORPP system, you always end up stumbling on people on those particular two ends. So I think also it will only be prudent for political parties to first of all hasten have IBC in place, open up the voter register, because without the voter register, political party membership means very little. That's why up to now, we've got areas that need elections, we've got wards that are lost MCAs, we've got members of parliament who, for unfortunate reasons, left us, but we've not been able to restart. So even as parties talk about going grassroots elections and everything else, the ultimate place where what I would call the altar has not been sorted. So I think it's important to look at that. And then, Fred, likening ODM to UDA that is not like for like. They're not the same. ODM did their elections, the famed one where we had men in black, in 2014. That is a decade ago. Well, shy of a few, 3 months or so. 10 years ago, you cannot still be saying that is the only party that did grassroots elections. Kano did a lot of grassroots elections in the past. Why are you not talking about Kano, for example? So for UDA, a party that is relatively new, attempting to do elections barely after they've come to power, about 2-3 years old of a party, if we were to extend from the other life they were before they rebranded to UDA, it's not, you wouldn't compare the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meshach, there's a real risk about, and the president alluded to this, about having these elections very close to the next general elections. But it would appear, and according to Alai, suggests that these elections cannot be held anytime soon. Anytime after 2 years from now, could be too close to the 2027 election, don't you think? What kind of risk does UDA stand to face, if at all these elections are delayed further?
You see, Fred, the risk is always one for every party, the fallout, because you will realize there are people who have toiled morning to evening through the night for that particular party, whichever party it is, and then comes to grassroots elections, like Robert have alluded, you realize the top organ of the party, and this is probably the presidential candidate and the men up there, are trying to plant strategic people. Because if you don't do that again, you have a serious risk as the presidential candidate. They can get to 2026 and go for the National Delegates Council and say, now you're not our presidential candidate, and what happens? And here you are thinking, I'm going to run for my second term. So you cannot risk having those leadership of the party from the grassroots, anybody, as long as they win democratically. So you want your people who will ensure that you are a presidential candidate for the party.
There can be no genuine grassroots.
There can be no genuine grassroots elections. There can be 50% or 60% genuine, but where it matters, it matters. That is the truth. So this is the risk. And this is why when one party, for example, the ruling party, wants to go for that grassroots elections, they whip the country's mood for all parties to go, so that it is safe to go, all of us together, so that when you fall out, you come to us, and when we fall out, we go to you. So it's like we have exchanged membership and people. But if you go alone, then every fallout is running away, and no one is falling out from other parties to come to your party, and it is dangerous. So when you want to go, you tell everybody in Kenya, we are going until the others begin to feel like, let's all go for grassroots elections.
Just before
Yes. In the Muri, you know, parties in Kenya are hedged on personalities. And that is a debate that we should have, because if we took our parties seriously, they are the basis of developing a country, because a party has a manifesto. And I had my good friend here, Honorable Alai, saying that ODM is the only party that has an ideology. And it's I would want to hear what that ideology is, because like the UDA party, critique it or not, our plan is very understandable. It's very simple. It's bottom up, socio-democratic, progressive party. And I can tell you for free that the UDA party will do a paradigm shift in the politics of this country. It's not that we wanted to follow their edict. No, they have been a party with a humongous following, but they have not been able to do an election. They have not even tried to do one. The one they tried to do at Kasarani was a miserable failure. Now that we had planned ours and it didn't happen, I call upon you to trust us, to trust our president and the party, that come April next year, the UDA party will be conducting its elections.
We had trusted you that December 9th will have the same elections.
Yeah, but
that sounds like pulpit.
Now, we didn't know that we'll have El Niño. And you see,
You're blaming El Niño.
But Fred, actually on a serious note, I think that putting elections in December for UDA, for me, of course there was the promise of doing it much earlier. That was too ambitious. I still feel there are a number of things that need to be sorted. The party needs to put its house in order. That has not been done. Let's not even stop blaming issues about creating deputy leaders, 3, and those for me are manufactured stuff. UDA was not ready for elections for me for the simple reason that they do not have an elections board. So any other thing they were going to do would be considered null and void. So unless we are coming up with the interim positions without an elections board, because the elections board chair is Anthony Maura, who is now the KRA chair. That board, a lot of people, Aurelia and the others who are there, have already left. So who was going to conduct elections? How can you have the secretariat conducting elections? For that, I think the party wasn't ready. At least, let's not really get into a lot of technical stuff or even some other form of poetry. The truth is that it was a little bit ambitious, but then the party was not ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need directions from my director on whether or not we are due for a break now or we continue with the discussions. Okay. Let's take a break. You're watching Morning Cafe. When we come back, we'll be looking at the National Dialogue Committee. The deadline lapses this week, yet there's already a deadlock. And how much of this has to do with the return of Uhuru Kenyatta into the limelight? That after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimule. We are still in studio with Arnold Maliba, John Ngugi, Robert Alai, and Mesha Kodede. On this issue of political parties, I just want to give Alai one chance because you will get to wrap it up. I need us to move to Uhuru Kenyatta and spend some time there.
Yes.
But even for ODM, the issue has always been that there's this discussion about succession. And any party election would indicate a structure of how succession would be carried out. Do you think that even ODM is ready to look at the party post Raila Odinga?
We want to succeed Raila Odinga?
No, I'm asking.
Has he decided to leave? Because political parties are not. It's not an employment. It's based on the leadership of people, and it's a members club, like we say. But I would like to say that ODM, we are liberal Democrats, and we are very well grounded in that. And you can see from all our actions that we are very liberal and we are very democratic in our undertakings. But one thing I would like to also remind us is that UDA was not going to carry elections because its own, influential individuals, both now appointed in ministries and in parastatals and in various state corporations, are not going to allow any election soon. The constituent parties of Kenya Kwanza are not going to allow any party because their interest must be served within UDA. Though ANC doesn't want to fold and Fort Kenya doesn't want to fold to join UDA, they still want to see and look at things on what is going to unfold in UDA. And I think that the success of election of UDA is going to affect the standing, the structure of the political parties. So there is no way Fort Kenya, ANC is going to allow a UDA election. The UDM, a lot of parties which constitute, these all small parties which constitute Kenya Kwanza are not going to allow the UDA. So the biggest enemy of UDA is not ODM. The biggest enemy of UDA is within UDA, yes, and also within Kenya Kwanza. So, but ODM as it is now, I believe that we are on the road because it is our interest to build a very strong political parties, with strong individuals. Even if you come to the elective politics like we are in now, and in the various forums, even in the houses, both the county assemblies and the national parliament and the Senate, if you compare the ODM leadership and other leadership of the house, you'll see the stark difference, because the party has built its cadre from the ground up, and we are very strong individuals and very well rooted, grounded ideologically. I believe also that, having lost, like they say, though we believe we didn't lose, having lost the last election and intending to win the next election, I believe that the next vehicle, the only vehicle you can depend on now is ODM.
Okay. On this question of what exactly ails UDA to make it unable to hold elections, there's been this debate, and it has been very well publicized, about the deputy party leader's position. And there are those who insist that it has to be more than one. There are those who say it has to be retained from Mount Kenya. And that, it would appear, is the biggest disagreement and the elephant in the room that no one is talking about, Ngugi.
You see, the oxymoron for any party is to say that you are creating a position, then you are dividing it amongst many people. Because you have to have control, the party control. Now you're telling me that you want to have 3 deputy party leaders with equal powers. For me, as a person who is very ingrained in institutions, that is ruining an institution. Because how do we come to a consensus on critical matters that affect the party when we have 3 deputy party leaders, each pulling in a different direction, and we all understand the dynamics of the Kenyan politics.
So you do agree that this could actually be the main bone of contention?
For me, I'm very opinionated on that we should have 1 party leader and 1 deputy party leader, so that the organization is understandable. Because now, when you have 3 people as deputy party leaders, And the party constitution says that the deputy party leader assents to be a presidential candidate. Then what are you trying to say? You are watering that position. And that is a feeling of the folks in Mount Kenya, that that position is being watered.
The president, in forming the Kenya Kwanza coalition, created an animal that it would appear is becoming a beast, and it could eat its own children because there are demands that ANC and Ford Kenya, which are bigger parties within the formation, should be part of this election for UDA, meaning they dissolve their parties and take part in this election. That is also another big point of departure for many people within UDA, because if at all you are in Kenya Kwanza and not in UDA, and you fail to take part in those elections, you'll be left out in the cold.
Perhaps I need to actually start high, and then I'll actually come to that. Number one, the issue of ideology. All political parties in this country, except the Communist Party, which is just former SDP, are all center of the left, ideologically. If you look at the documents, they are all center of the left, nothing different. A lot of those manifestos look like they are written by the same person. Look at the constitutions, sounds the same. The only difference is the people, the faces of the people there, their ethnicity, and probably the regions from where they come from. Otherwise, ideologically, our parties are the same in this country, except for the Communist Party, which for me is so much of people who are trying to come up, live in utopia a little bit. But the rest of us, if you look at the constitutions, if you look at the ideals, everybody else is looking at Article 43 from the same lenses. The wordings could be different, it's just the people, but the same thing. That's why even programs can actually get all manner of names, but they are the same. But then there's the question of ideology versus policy. The ideology, as it were, and policy being what works today. That debate is still on, the place of ideology and then the place of policy. So be that as it may, we also have to work with what works versus the ideology thing. It's something that we talk about and we don't leave it. But then we also need Fred to speak to this, that political parties are para-government. They are public agencies. Even as we treat them as public entities, individual entities, sometimes running them as kiosks, they are supposed to actually help IEBC, to help government. You see, when you are vetting your candidates, in law, that particular function is actually sublet to the party. ODM today, UDA, and other parties, about 30 of them, are now being funded from the exchequer. They are no longer individual staff. So ordinarily, of course, the way we've structured our governance is that we have got 3 arms of government. Even though we are just shy to say we have 4. Of course, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Then, of course, we borrowed heavily from the Americans. We've got the independent bodies, the commissions. That in the US should be the 4th arm of government. But normally there is always the 5th column, which is the party. Parties go to the people, sell, if you go to my village, you will hear people say, I am ODM Dam, I am Mimi ni Mutu wa KANU. This is the frontier, this is the vanguard, the tip of the spear for political party organization. It works, wins elections, and once people get to government, somehow political parties lose voices. I think that is an anomaly and we need to fix it. We cannot be at a place today where you have got UDA being what it is. That is the vehicle, that wheelbarrow. You see there, yellow and green, and then that black wheelbarrow there. That was the tip of the spear that won this particular battle. But now in the governance of, or rather in the administration of state, now that particular entity is actually set aside, and people who are running government even look down on that particular symbol and its ideals. It's time the political party becomes the 5th column. It becomes the other arm of government. Because how do you deal with political affairs of a party, or how you are running government? With the 3 arms of government, you are not going to settle some of these problems. Okay. Members of, let me say this, PSS and even CSS, for example, should be summoned by parties and ask, this is what we promised the people. How are you delivering? Okay. The retreat, for example, that was in South B the other day for the cabinet, what was the voice of the party in that? It's important that the party that promised the people, and the people who actually fought for the party to win are those chairmen of Boda Boda, the market chair people and everything. Those were the people who are organizing. was their voice in South B, for example. So we need to strengthen political parties away from the way we are trying to, we're talking about elections here. The constitutional part of it is that the constitution makes political parties public entities. So whatever the party decides and gives to IEBC, it has to have actually been that there are functions that IEBC sublets. I'm using the word sublet deliberately. But political parties are public entities.
Okay.
And they should have much more of a voice. So coming to the point where you're talking about whether Ford Kenya, ANC and others have got a share in UDA's way of doing things, I think that is not constitutional. Ford Kenya should manage its own affairs. ANC should do the same. What I don't really advocate for is that we start going the Kanu way. When we had Jaramogi's seat being diluted among so many people, you see the price we paid for that. It's not really been solved, as in we really haven't gotten over the political mischief then. We also cannot again get around and start doing things the same way it's been done. We moved and came up with a very funny description of a party, calling it the coalition party. You know, it's only in this country where people come up with a very funny phenomenon. So a coalition party that has got only two people in them, Martha Karua and Raila Odinga. But then it's the bigger thing. The rest of the people are in their own parties, because today, the truth is that you cannot talk about Azimio if you did away with ODM. So Azimio is ODM and ODM is Azimio. Outside of that, there's no Azimio. Okay. So why then do we have something else going up there? So I think that a lot of these issues that Mweshibu is actually pointing out, that having deputy party leaders with equal powers and everything else, I think we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel. We should make these things so easy. We make things so difficult unnecessarily. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Meshach, I want you to wrap up that conversation for us on this issue about political parties and whether or not we are on the right track in ensuring that political parties, beyond being vehicles for elections only, actually do serve the purpose.
Thank you, Fred. The truth is, we all know, and Kenyans at large know what political parties should be and how they expect the political parties to operate. But the problem is, the same people who are in governance, who are in positions of power, do not want the political parties and even parliament to be, because when you strengthen the political parties and they are operating the way we know in our head they should, it means parliament will be a big thing in governance of the country. And does the president want parliament to remain independent so that parliament can make some critical decisions without influence from the executive? I doubt. So this is the reason why there can never be a time when these political parties will be what we think in our head and what Kenyans expect them to be. Okay. Because somebody somewhere will need, because if political parties were to be like that and they would be disciplined in parties and the law would be followed, we wouldn't see what we have seen, for example, with Jubilee. Jubilee had its members and people who went to the elections and elected them as Jubilee Party, part of Azimio and all that. Then 2 weeks later, the same members are now on the opposite side, and nothing seems to be wrong for anybody about that, because everybody runs and cites democratic space. You know, you can go anywhere. We are a democracy. If that is happening, to whose benefit? The question would be, to whose benefit? If we are allowed to go and tell the people that I am aligning to probably Raila Odinga's ideology on this election, then 2 days when I am declared a winner, I no longer align with that. I am now aligning with the opposite. And where is the common man in this whole conversation? They feel like we have been denied opportunity to be or to see the kind of leadership we wanted. So in short, until the time when anybody who sits in the seat of president will decide that we want to strengthen the political parties, then it will work.
Okay. Let us now move to the other big story, and that's the return of Uhuru Kenyatta into the fray. Yesterday, he was in Ukambani accompanied by Wiper Party leader who's also the co-chair of the National Dialogue Committee, whose deadline expires this week. And we want to see if at all there's any connection between the return of Uhuru Kenyatta and what's happening with the National Dialogue Committee. We do have a clip from yesterday as the former president spoke in Ukambani. Let's get that one.
Hiyo mambo ya kuogopa iliisha bwana. Tumetishwa, tumeambiwa nini, tumeambiwa sijui nini. Kila saa mtu akishindwa njia ya kufanya kitu yake, sijui serikali iliyopita. Sasa kesho yake mtasema hata watoto wakikataa ama mama akikataa kuzaa, najua Uhuru. Sasa mimi sijui, lakini tumezoea tu, tunayasikia, inaingia na inapita na tunaendelea. Kama ni namna gani? Yangu ni kuwaombea amani, umoja, na tuje sasa tufanye kazi ile ambayo imenileta. Hiyo ndio hamu yangu kubwa sana. Tufanye kazi ya kutoa kila mtu shilingi yake, ndururu yake, yote itasaidia kuhakikisha ya kwamba nyumba ya Mungu imekwisha.
Former President Uhuru Kenyatta speaking yesterday in Ukambani there as he attended a church service accompanied by Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka. Now, gentlemen, a lot is happening this week and we just want to see if at all there's any connection. After 90 days, which expire on Friday, the National Dialogue Committee, which is actually carrying a lot of the aspirations of Kenya, matters to do with IEBC, matters to do with the cost of living, all these things carried in that basket. And everyone is waiting for this report. Yet on Friday, or towards the latter part of last week, talks of a stalemate in as far as the issues around cost of living started to appear. There's a headline in the Standard, I think on Saturday, where the head of the Azimio Technical Committee for the talks, that's Jeremiah Kioni, says that the talks were a waste of time. At the same time, Kenya Party leader Martha Karua talked of a return to protests, and now we see Uhuru is back. One of the issues that Jeremiah Kioni mentioned was very key to Jubilee, which is Uhuru Kenyatta's party, and that is the issue of political party interference, which was one of those things being discussed. According to Kioni, those two issues, cost of living and political party interference, have not been agreed upon. Alai, let's start with you. Is there a connection? Because they say in politics nothing happens by accident. If it happens, it was meant to be. The former president's return to the fray this week when the deadline is due, and he was seen with the co-chair of the National Committee.
No, I think, Fred, that we need not to read much into what the former president was trying to do. I think that he was just getting out there, trying to feel also what the people are feeling. And also, I think, the country now seems like it lacks leadership because the president is not forthright. You need to have a president whom you trust. And I don't think that many people in Kenya now trust the president and the deputy president. The deputy president is a bit, even off on many issues. He is not a uniting figure. And just from our basic civics lessons, the presidency is one of the unifying factors in a country. And when you see some of the things which have been done in this country, when the president is not able to be trusted by the population, by his actions, by his utterances, and kutenga, kutayarisha, a lot of plans, but none of his promises come to fruition. So I think that what the former president was trying to do as an individual was just coming out there, telling the country that, you have a support base, you have people who still can come out and speak for you. We are also watching what is happening, and when the mess is as it is, please don't blame us. Don't blame us and say, because the president who is blaming the former president was the deputy president all through. Ichungwa was the chairman of budget for 7 years. The whole team in Kenya Kwanza, a good number of them, the top leadership, were very influential in the last government. So the president was trying to say that, you're just clueless. You need not to blame me for what is happening there. I don't think that it was anything to do with, the ongoing talks. I don't think that the president was trying to, because if it was anything to do with the ongoing talks, it would have not been so disjointed, because the former prime minister, was in at RFUA grounds watching rugby, and Martha Karua and others were not there. I think only Eugene Wamalwa and Jeremiah Kioni joined the former president in Ukambani. I don't read much into it.
Bwana, do you agree that we are reading a bit too much in this? Remember the leadership
but I also wanted to tell Bwana that, you know, he's welcome in ODM, but I can guarantee you that come the next election, Ngugi will be in Jubilee, will not be in UDA.
Okay. Bwana Ngugi, we saw that Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta took a back step to allow for the talks to happen. Now we are seeing a stalemate with only days left to the deadline. Then we see the former president reappear, and we are saying we are reading too much into it. Isn't there something?
I would tend to agree with him. This would have made more sense if it was said somewhere in central Kenya. But in Ukambani, there is already a kingpin there called Kalonzo Musyoka.
Who was present.
Who was present, and those guys are aligned. The people that are not aligned are the people from the mountain where he comes from. And you know, the rain started hitting us actually in Mount Kenya because of these simple talks by the president. When he started saying that we gave him the mandate to govern us. And then he started saying 2 billion shillings are being lost every day. And he was complaining like me. And he was the head of state. So I don't read too much into what he said. I bet this should have made more weight if it was said somewhere in Murang'a or in Thika, while the president was trying to consolidate his base. He has had no intention at all to come back to the mountain. And you know, the mountain is the one that propelled him to be president. So all these utterances have been said elsewhere, as opposed to where the rubber meets the road. Okay. So I don't see anything much about it, but I can attest to you that in a meeting that was held somewhere in the Rift Valley yesterday, Aaron Cheriot, who is the head of Senate, majority leader, was very categorical in saying that the only thing that we will never deviate from is a plan. And a part of that plan that these guys want to dismantle is the housing levy.
Okay. And the Standard quotes the president saying, I'd rather the talks fail. Yes? This is only days to the deadline. He'd rather the talks fail than shelve the housing project, what they call the plan.
Yeah.
Uhuru Kenyatta would have waited until all this is done, until the report is handed to the principals. But appearing on the very last week and working with the co-chair of the National Dialogue Committee, when the president, on the other hand, is saying, I'd rather the talks fail. That's an indication of something, even from a political standpoint, Bwana Odede.
Thank you, Fred. Allow me to say two things. Number one, the country has a problem politically, but it is not a problem for the entire country. It is a problem of the politics of Mount Kenya. That's the problem we have as a country. Because it is Mount Kenya that are battling within themselves to see who is their next kingpin, quote unquote. And they have not arrived on that. So we will continue seeing problems across the country as long as Mount Kenya have not arrived in who is their kingpin. Yes, there are people who right now think Honorable Rigathi, the Deputy President, is, and there are part of Mount Kenya who think he is not yet there. And so as long as they are still looking for their kingpin, we will have a problem across. That is one. Number two, to the former president, Uhuru has been kept intact in politics by UDA and the ruling party, not Uhuru himself. Because when Murkomen goes to the airport and finds Kenyans are on social media saying the airport is leaking, he invites Uhuru back. It is Uhuru. Whenever they are asked about why Kenyans are feeling pain at the pump, they invite Uhuru back to politics. It is Uhuru. whenever they are asked about their own promises, the things they promised Kenyans while coming to power, they invite Uhuru back. So what do you want Uhuru to do? When there is an opportunity for Uhuru to say something, he must say it. So he might not have come back to align himself politically with regards to whatever the talks are going on. But I think the UDA have constantly made Uhuru. And why do they make Uhuru the so-called the evil one? Because in the voting pattern and the politics of Mount Kenya all along, Mount Kenya don't vote for leadership. Mount Kenya vote to avoid the evil one. So you must create for them the evil thing, which had been created in Raila for a long time, and this time Uhuru was made to be that evil. So that when you go to vote, they unite against the evil, quote unquote. And so whenever there is that evil person, they don't care who are we voting, as long as we unite to avoid that evil one. So Uhuru was made the evil one in 2022 elections. And before you get another evil one to replace, you must maintain Uhuru there to be their evil one, to unite them for you. So this is what is happening in Mount Kenya, and it will keep happening as long as they have not found another evil to replace Uhuru. Uhuru will remain in their lips for the UDA and the ruling party to unite Mount Kenya, because Mount Kenya vote against anything evil to unite them.
Maliba, because I still insist, and I want to know if at all you see the connection. Excuse me. The only interest that Uhuru has directly with these talks is the issue of Jubilee, and the fact that they insist that UDA is interfering in the running of Jubilee. The fact that the Secretary General, his Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni, says the talks will no longer be consequential, and then we see Uhuru appearing at that same time. Are you seeing no connection at all?
I'll respond to that just after this. I just need to tell Meshach that the people of Mount Kenya dissolved the office of the kingpin. Of course, de facto, it exists. De jure, it doesn't. But in the last elections, that office was dissolved. It's not there. That's why the people themselves led the way. Any other person who's trying to tell the people that this office is important, the people have not yet rallied and seen the need for that. Even if it's there, probably it's now a rotating one. And I think probably at the moment, Murega Baichu could be the current kingpin. Could actually hand over then after the link, after the noises in Meru. Otherwise, that office was dissolved by the people of Mount Kenya. And like the people of Western, they are free to choose wherever they want. That is how democracy works. But be that as it is, I think everybody else is trying to water down Uhuru Kenyatta's reappearance. It's not a happenstance. First of all, I'll look at it on three levels. Number one, intra-Azimio dynamics, and then Azimio Kenya Kwanza dynamics, and then personally to the person of Uhuru. But even before I get to that, it's important to point out this. When we talk about the problems beleaguering this country, the problems, economic problems, the doldrums we are in today, Uhuru Kenyatta should be so silent. He should be so quiet. I don't know where this gentleman gets the audacity. Sijui anatoa wapi hiyo nguvu ya kuongea. Because literally we are where we are because of what he has done. You know, and Azimio told us repeatedly that history is important. So you cannot tell us that history is important, and when we look back from where we've come from, now it's no longer important. We also need to be consistent. If Kenya Kwanza has to be very honest about where we are today, they must also know where we've come from. If you don't know about yesterday, you do not know today, and you definitely do not know where we are going. So history is important. So when it comes to the issues of the economy, the problems we're having as the nation, Uhuru Kenyatta should be so silent. In the words of the kingpin of old, as in, he should lie low as an envelope once it comes to these things. Wherever he gets the confidence and the energy to talk about these issues, I just don't know. But I would also point out to a few things, that probably a few things in Kenya Kwanza are making him think like kind of, okay, I can actually come back, like he said. Now, on intra-Azimio dynamics, number one, Uhuru could be showing up showing up with Kalonzo to probably twist Raila into playing ball. There's just something about it. You can't. Chinua Achebe said that if you see a toad running during the day, it's either running after something or something is after its life. So Uhuru Kenyatta is this particular hypothetical toad that is actually showing up There's either something it's running after or something is running after it. So in intra-Azimio issues, Raila might actually be tired of being the person that actually shoulders the weight. When Kioni and Martha are actually coming out to say that this is not consequential, blah, 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 and everything else, yet who saw any demonstrations in Gishugu? Did you see any demonstrations in Daragwa? So Kioni cannot be showing up in Raila's meetings with their sufuria in his head and thinks that that is how he's actually contributing to the struggle. It's like the elephant and the hare crossing the bridge. The hare was on the back of the elephant, the bridge shook. And then the hare was going everywhere telling people that the elephant and I shook the bridge. The real person who shook the bridge was the elephant, and that is Raila. So Martha and Kioni should not be the people, honestly, even trying to voice up and sounding louder than the other side that has actually done the heavy battling. So there's the intra-Azimio dynamics in there, and Uhuru could be trying to tell Raila, you see, if you can't do that, probably you can then bring Kalonzo, because Kalonzo in the last demonstrations really showed a little bit of weight. You saw how Eastern actually played up. So Uhuru could be thinking that could be the way to go. So there is also that. Secondly, of course, there is the Azimio and then the Kenya Kwanza part of it. You know, this NADCO thing was a dialogue, not a deal-log. It was about dialogue. If there's anything that has been clear is that Kenya Kwanza has actually picked the proposals made by Azimio. They might not say it publicly, but they have done and incorporated it in the cost of living. That has actually been largely adopted. But you cannot cede the governance of a country informally to another co-ruler who has not been elected in. Because if whatever comes from NADCO, Parliament does not have a voice over it, they will just rubber stamp it. Because quote-unquote Parliament is, the way they're actually saying, is compromised. It means that we are usurping the power of Parliament and therefore really soiling this thing called sovereignty. So the people's vote and everything else, they chose, they have got their own representatives. It doesn't matter. So that then when it comes to the cost of living, if the people sitting in Stony Athi writing the report in Machakos are going to be the people who decide how the Finance Act is reviewed and the policies towards that end, then it simply means that Azimio are co-rulers with Kenya Kwanza. They didn't need votes to actually get to that particular level. It will also amount to Kenya Kwanza actually conceding that they are unable to run government. That is, they can take their ideas, yes, but you cannot sneak in ideas and dictate to them to actually on how they do that. Okay. Otherwise, the talks cannot fail. The only thing that has failed is an attempt at a handshake. So the dialogue is on, the talks have not failed. The only thing that is failing is an attempt at co-governing and forcing through. Then there is the state capture thing. I said initially that the dialogue, the NADCO process, was a dialogue. It wasn't a deal-log. We weren't in it to actually make deals. So there is, of course, the other demands people have. And of course, you can hide behind the problems in Jubilee. For the longest time when Jubilee became a party, they refused to do elections. They refused to strengthen elections, or rather to strengthen the party. Now you have got people, everybody else considering themselves equals. And there must always be a first among equals. So the problems in Jubilee are not the creation of Kenya Kwanza. And Meshach alluded to that earlier on, that Uhuru Kenyatta was able to rule this country and have a party as a special purpose vehicle running all through without necessarily ever going back to the grassroots and making it a party. So you cannot have some GMO lab-made political party that has never been exposed to nature and expect it that on the day you put it out there, there have been no test runs, there has been no attempt at culturing it, you expect it to actually survive. So the Jubilee problems are very small problems. Uhuru Kenyatta should just deal with his new party leader, who is Sabina Chege, and solve that at that particular level. It's a small thing. Uhuru Kenyatta comes from Kiambu, Sabina comes from Muranga. That can be a small thing that can be settled at Kenol. Robert
Elai, a lot of premium has been placed on these talks. Raila Odinga said, he revealed that his silence is to give the dialogue a chance. Yeah. When we see now the president coming to say he'd rather see the talks fail than shelve some projects. And we see people like Kioni and Martha Karua talking about going back to the streets and talking and saying, generally expressing their skepticism about whether or not these talks will be consequential. We're only days away from this deadline. Do you still feel this thing will be consequential?
No, I believe that it will be consequential because it's not on the hands of Ruto, Raila or Uhuru to decide on whether it will be or will not be. I think that the train left the station. Ruto himself tried to use all powers to ensure that even no talks started. Gachagua, these talks started against all odds. And I think that they'll succeed because this country sometimes is great. People in power sometimes underrate, the power of the people. But they'll come to realize that, it is not their interest. What you see the president is communicating there, that I'd rather talks fail than shell the housing project, is very selfish. Because if you ask me, the housing project should not be a priority now because of many. Why do you take to build 2,000 houses in Noma Bay? Who requested you? What you need to build. Personally, I don't want to own a house. What if I don't? What if I just want to own a house which I own in the village or elsewhere and decide to pay rent all my life in Nairobi? There's a reason why people have their own aspirations and individual wants and needs. You would not want the president to force what he's trying to force down our throat, that there's some ambitious housing project which is not, if you ask me, we have one in Pangani which is a complete failure. The others he started, from start they're going to fail. In execution, in planning, in everything, they're going to fail. The housing project serves only one purpose, is to loot funds. And that one purpose it benefits only one person, and that's the president. So when he says that he'd rather talks fail than shell the housing project, we understand it because that's what has been from all the newspaper headlines you've seen throughout the week and throughout the month. It is very consistent in Kenya Kwanza that this political formation has no interest of Kenyans at heart. And when you also ask me in regards to President Uhuru vis-a-vis, Kioni, Matakarua, I believe, sometimes very controversially, I believe that people consider it controversial, but I believe that Uhuru, Kioni, Matakarua, Gachagua, Ruto are all on the same side. I don't see, because, Uhuru made us lose a lot of seats in Nairobi, and I still hold it against him. A lot of seats because of this preserving of seats.
You doubt the former president's genuine position in Azimio?
Not only in Azimio, because, they were on the same side. There's no way I'm going to separate Uhuru from Ruto. If I was serious in this Kenyan politics, the people served together for 10 years. The people were joined at the hip. You see, he had all the powers and the influence to do the things right. The only time Uhuru tried to do things right is when Raila held his hands and told him, please, you are going to leave this power without having done anything for this country. Do this expressway. Use the military to accomplish this because time is not on your side. Please go here and do this. Please go. These people, if you see the tenure of President Uhuru and Ruto, they are all selfish. They are going to accomplish nothing. They loot the country, the coffers dry. That is their consistent action. I don't see how these people are separated.
Okay.
Not that they are sabotaging Azimio, but these people have no vision for this country. The two of them, they are joined at the hip. I don't see any reason for you to separate Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, Kimani Ichung'wah, Kioni, yote, same WhatsApp group.
Wow. Robert Alai, MCA Kileleshwa, has said it. A very interesting assertion, Bwana Ngugi, but even as you respond to that, these talks carry a lot beyond the cost of living, and probably the biggest other issue is the reconstitution of the IEBC. But if at all, because people are talking about failure of the talks, if at all they do fail, a lot will have failed as well. There are a number of constituencies that still are not represented because of a lack of IEBC in place. We have the looming deadline for the boundaries review. We still don't have IEBC. These talks failing will be beyond just political ramifications. There's so many other things that are pegged on them.
Indemuri, who is Mother Karua, or what is the name of the other gentleman, the one from Daragwa? Whose emotions are they trying to whip in Mount Kenya? Because they are saying, then we should go back to the streets. won't be the right arena be in central Kenya. Right now, the meetings are supposed to be held in central Kenya because we know if the other communities are called to demonstrate, they will come out. But who will come out in Mount Kenya? Who are they speaking on behalf? Who is former president speaking on behalf? He has no constituency. So they are taking these guys for a ride. And I will agree with him. Because if they were serious about what they are saying, then they are the only people in Azimio who don't have a constituency. Yet they are very loud in putting sufurias on their head and urging people from other communities to come out and demonstrate. How many people did you see in Thika demonstrating? Or in Murang'a? Or in Gatanga for that matter? These issues that we are dealing with right now are personal issues. And the fear is that a commission will be formed to look into the cartelish nature of this country. Because we are rooting this country day and night. And even the succeeding president will not be able to fight corruption in Kenya if we don't do away with the cartels. Now they are assembling back together. Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, Kalonzo Musyoka, you heard the issues that we had here in Mavoko when the houses were being demolished. They never told us that some of those MPs right now in Azimio are the ones who sold that land. Even sitting governors in Azimio are the ones who are selling that land. So these gentlemen are not sincere. They only come out when their interests are at stake. They don't care about Wanjiku. The austerity measures that the president has prescribed on us, if they are done right, and we lock the cookie jar and guard it like they guard the nuclear codes in the US, this country in 2 years will be a different country. Okay. Because everybody is now talking about the cost of living. Yet they don't know that for a long time, the cost of living in this country was what it was because the central bank was propping the shilling. They were using our reserves to create artificial exchange rates. Now this regime comes and says, we will not do that again. This is a free market economy. We will let the forces of demand and supply dictate what the exchange rates should be. Okay. We will not borrow. And I can tell you for a fact, the county assemblies have not gotten disbursements since September. I think we just got the September disbursement. Why? Because of our debt obligation. This guy took us to the drains. And then he's very loud here, talking about how he's being blamed for all the billions of shillings that he used to renovate JKA, yet it has leaking roofs. That is a fact.
Okay. Odede, back to the issue of the National Dialogue Committee. A lot of people seem to be dismissing, and the general public may get this feeling that the talks were not that important to begin with. Do you agree with that kind of assertion? Because many politicians feel it's going to be inconsequential, let's not wait for anything. Even the kind of statements we're seeing would rather the talks fail from the president himself. That is indicative of a position that the general public can take seriously.
I honestly think Kenya Kwanza did not go into that talks because they wanted, or because they wanted this country to move to probably the next level. They went into those talks because their masters probably appealed to them that, you know, you need to. Because we got to a point, you remember the point where Azimio was completely not even regarding the diplomatic community in the country because of what they feel has happened and the hand of the West in our politics and all that. So I personally believe William Ruto and his team went to that table because the same West were his friends and pushed him to probably sit down, because the West don't care about anything about this country. All they care about is whether it is artificial peace, as long as they can make deals for their companies out there. they don't care what happens. And I think this is what brought William Ruto to the table, and not because William Ruto wanted anything for this country and all that. But something needs to be told here. While we say and think and believe that Uhuru led us here, which I also agree, why is people like Ngugi not imagining that we were all alive when these whole monies were being looted and William Ruto was number 2? And I remember when people like Waiguru were told by Raila this happened, and the people of Kirinyaga elect him to punish Raila Odinga. And Waiguru says, we lost 791 million. And the people of Kirinyaga says, we want our thief. Where do you think those monies... Did they say that? Yes. No. Where do you think those monies were going to be gotten back to the economy to work? So, yes, I agree, Uhuru messed this country. And I remember Ruto somewhere in Kakamega telling, and I think you're a media house, you must have these clips, telling Raila Odinga, wachana na Waiguru, ni mtu mdogo sana, face me and Uhuru. So why are you not remembering all this? The Eurobond. These are the places where we lost the money, and these are the places where we dumped our economy. Wait.
We also remember very well.
Wait. You didn't want to remember anything, so when I'm remembering things, keep quiet. I remember, Fred, in this country, these were happening, and everybody could tell we are headed a certain direction. And that time, they didn't care. Until the last minute, I don't see where William Ruto resigned and said, I can no longer be part of this. He got his last salary, and then the next salary was as a president. And then you now want to sit here and tell us when Kimani Ichung'wah was the budget, and I remember the team in Azimio, before it was Azimio, asking, where is the Eurobond? And the Rotich guy, who was the CS for Treasury, tells us, tulichukua Eurobond tukamwaga ndani ya hii pesa ingine. We can't tell a particular project it. This is the reason why we are in this mess. So Uhuru and Ruto, like Alai, have said one thing and you can never separate. So if one part of the mess is now hiding and telling us how Uhuru should not, the likes of Maliba are now telling us how Uhuru should not even gather any courage to speak, but Ruto should speak.
He should not.
But Ruto should speak.
Lie as low as an envelope.
It is a lie.
I know everyone wants to speak. I'll give you each a minute for your final comments, because
I hadn't done my round.
It's okay. To end by
But let's start from this particular point. Number one, it's unfair for Alai and Meshach to actually say that Uhuru and Ruto are one thing. Uhuru did a lot of heavy lifting. Waswahili wanasema mgala muue lakini haki yake umpe. Uhuru did a lot of heavy lifting for Azimio. If it were not for Uhuru, the difference in votes, you know, Uhuru almost delivered it for Azimio. Let's also not behave like we don't know. The 233,000 votes, 233,000 votes that actually made the difference was actually one of those things you say it's battering it to the very end. Uhuru did a lot of heavy lifting for Azimio. Azimio people should not look down on their party leader. They should actually respect Uhuru as much as possible. So at least on that particular end, they are not correct. Secondly, when William accepted Azimio's demands, it wasn't because anyone had actually asked him. It's just because he listened. Remember, they had a committee to actually select IBC. That was post. Everything else was post. It's not because he couldn't actually proceed. He had parliamentary backing that could actually do that. It's actually heeding that particular process. So what's emerging is that Azimio was not necessarily asking for dialogue. They were asking for something else. And that because this particular process has not birthed whatever they wanted to give us. And you could remember BBI. There was the BBI, and then there was the BBI inside BBI. There was the real thing that BBI was trying to achieve, and then the icing on the cake that made BBI. So they hoped that the same would actually come out of this particular process. Now, if you look at the lessons learned, it took William 4 years. Fred, it took William 4 years, a Damascus moment of 4 years. When he speaks about William was there, for 4 years, William was speaking about these things. Everything else that he says that Azimio had called out, during the handshake, they cleaned that particular process and said it was okay. So you cannot eat your cake and have it. Meshach, as in you have to choose.
Okay, let's give the others a chance. Robert, you go next.
Yeah.
Just your final remarks.
You know, I believe that, you know, Kenyans will come to realize that, you know, the people we have in power here are now very clueless about what they are supposed to do. And it's grounded in the ideology of UDA that you need not to serve the people who elected you. You need to loot as much as you can. You know, you need to wear the designer shoes and designer wear. You need to ride big cars, Lexus, you know, top of the range cars, just for, you know, to show off power. You need to wear Rolexes and so on, shirts worth 500, 600,000 and so on. The government is not alive to the feelings of the wananchi. And that's the unfortunate being, because it's being inspired by the president. The president, even if you tell him that you said yourself that we have enough ambassadors outside there, please don't make these unnecessary trips. The president now has turned into a human trafficker. He's calling on Kenyans to go and slave out in the Middle East and in Europe. The president now is contributing to the biggest brain drain. We are taking our most able-bodied, our most competent Kenyans to go and work in European countries, to slave away in European countries, the Americas, you know, to the Middle East. It is very unfortunate that the president is inspiring this. The president is not creating wealth. The president is not creating value back at home. The president is only doing one thing and one thing alone, messing up the economy. And for the first time, he has invited the IMF and the World Bank. They are back with their structural adjustment programs. They are messing the economy good time. It is not going to benefit Kenyans, but it's going to benefit a few people. They are going to loot and leave the country dry. I pray, and the only people who can save you, you know, in this, and we have the mechanisms. I think wait for ODM. We are going to communicate soon after the registration, after the completion of registration of our members, after the completion of our elections. We are going to communicate to you and tell you the next thing, because this country is this government is very easy to defeat.
Okay, John, about a minute or so, please.
Indimuri, I hope the ODM folks will tell us something that we haven't had before. But this country gave William Ruto and the UDA party the mandate to run this country for the next 5 years. We want them to be as loud as possible in critiquing us. But they know if the president fails, the country fails. So they should also support the president as they critique him, because he is our president for now, and that is not going to change until 2027. The UDA government is in power, and it behooves them to critique us, to correct the government, but they should also support the government so that the people of Kenya have a win-win situation. I will be remiss, Indimuri, if I didn't tell you of the wonderful things that we are doing in Murang'a. And I can report to you that in a very recent survey that was conducted by Infotrack, the Murang'a MCAs were number 2, our governor was number 2. We are doing wonderful things, and I hope this country emulates the leadership of Irongo Kang'ata in Murang'a and the MCAs in Murang'a also. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I thank the people of Gatanga for affording me this opportunity to be here. Thank you.
About 30 seconds.
Fred, in 30 seconds, we all would have wished that we succeed as a nation. The problem is we have a president who doesn't want this nation to succeed. A president who would want the nation to succeed does not look at the public in the eye and lie. This is a president who lies every day. A president who tells you, go out there, gorogoro moja ya mahindi is now 50 bob. When the media houses can go around the country and clearly see gorogoro moja ya mahindi is 170. If we want,
really?
Ngugi, if
you don't live in this country. Ngugi, even Pembe fly is 129. You cannot lie and accuse somebody of lying.
Did he lie or no?
You lying. You are lying. As in any Kenyan, you don't plant maize. You don't consume maize. You cannot turn a national platform into a lying platform and get away with that. No.
Let's have some order.
At least on Ugali, I am an authority.
Okay.
When it comes to Ugali,
Meshach, please wrap.
You want me to count?
You
want me to count?
Let's talk about Ugali. Let's start from there.
We don't have more time to talk.
Let's talk about Ugali. You have lied on Ugali.
No, there is no lie.
We will not let you run away with that.
Gentlemen,
so
we can
if we want to
allow me to end this show. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Gentlemen. Asanteni sana. Mesha Kodede, Robert Alai.
129 now
Arnold
for
Malibu.
Pembe, for example.
Let me go through this editorial comment as we come to the end of our session this morning. Gentlemen, as the deadline looms for the 10-member bipartisan team engaged in crucial discussions on matters of national importance, a cloud of uncertainty hangs over the effectiveness of their efforts. The National Dialogue Committee, entrusted with the task of reaching consensus on pressing issues, is teetering on the brink of failure as it grapples with a stalemate. At the forefront of these discussions was the imperative need to counter the soaring cost of living, a concern that resonates deeply with every Kenyan. Yet, regrettably, the committee finds itself at an impasse, unable to agree on measures to alleviate this burden, which was the primary catalyst for convening these talks in the first place. The skepticism surrounding the outcome of these deliberations seems increasingly justified. Given the lack of tangible progress and the potential repercussions of this deadlock, the committee's failure to find common ground not only threatens the effectiveness of the dialogue, but also squanders the resources of hardworking taxpayers who rightfully expect fruitful outcomes from the initiative. The urgency of the situation cannot be overstated. The repercussions of the impasse extend far beyond the committee room. The ripple effects are felt across various sectors, impacting the electoral processes and governance structure of our nation. The absence of a functioning Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, for example, has left several constituencies without representation. Moreover, constitutional deadlines for constituency boundary reviews looms large, demanding immediate attention. The National Dialogue Committee must rise above personal agenda and party affiliations to honor the commitment